My time in Lisbon was a magical time, not only because I got to live in a place I had dreamed of living years ago when I first visited with my sister, but having been able to move there at a time when I desperately needed a new space. Moving to Lisbon gave me exactly all that and more. I guess it did help that when I moved there I didn't have too many expectations of how it would be or how it would feel. I just knew I really wanted to. I knew I was open to something new, and I was open to whatever that new could be or look like. I was charmed by the little streets, I was charmed by the little hills and little cafes, little installations, the roads with lush green trees. There was something so beautiful and whimsical about it. I knew I wanted to remember this for a long time. One of the things I really love about Lisbon is its underratedness. Obviously, through the years, I think with popularity and the fact that whoever falls in love with it cannot shut up about how great it is, including myself. I think that this is something that might change in the future. But there's something lovely still about the local touristness of it all. You don't really have a certain place that you need to go when you visit Lisbon. It's just a place to be. Every little corner or neighborhood has a place to be. Every little cafe draped with flowers and moss overgrowing is just a place to be. Every corner, every hill, every church on the top is a place to be. And I think that's what I really loved the most about my time in Lisbon. Another wonderful thing about Lisbon is how walk friendly it is. You can walk most of the city, and if you feel brave enough, walk all the way to another coast or another town. This is something I really valued. I also loved showing the city to my family, my friends, or whoever was visiting, because it's such a cute place and everybody who visited really fell in love with it. Whenever moving to a new place, I have to ask myself, is it safe for Black people? Is it safe for women? Is it safe for someone like me? And Lisbon wasn't different in that questioning either. There are places that are safe, there are places that are not, but overall I never really worried about going home late at night. I never really worried about walking alone in a small alley. I was mindful, and I did stay in places I could feel a quote-unquote good vibe about, but I never was hyper vigilant. Maybe that's also because I've lived in some very dangerous places for women, whether that was South Africa as a child or my time in Brazil. You kind of do learn the different spaces and what you watch out for and how to navigate spaces as a Black woman. Regardless of all that, it was also important for me, wherever I am, wherever I choose to be, that I don't let fear override my curiosity. I just take caution with it, and so far that has fared me well. When it comes to queerness, I feel like that wasn't such a big issue. We never experienced anything while walking around, and specifically when my partner would come, because to be honest I felt like that was the only time I was quote-unquote visibly queer. It didn't feel like it was such a big issue, and we did get to travel a bit around Portugal, from North Portugal to the south when we did our van trip, and also in smaller areas and bigger areas. And I would say that in none of those experiences did we feel particularly threatened or particularly unsafe because we were queer. You do have the occasional stare or unnecessarily comment, and the comments were usually from men. Funny enough. But besides that, it didn't ever feel like it was uncomfortable enough for you to feel unsafe, if that makes sense. And we did also get to experience our first Portuguese pride. It wasn't a big one, but it was also just on the verge of the pause of the pandemic, so I think people were fairly cautious. But I did notice that the queer community there is thriving and strong. I would say, however, maybe like in most queer spaces, it seems like there's more spaces for gay men particularly. I feel like all in all, you did sense that it was a very friendly place for queer people, and you would often see couples of all mixtures together, and it didn't seem to feel like such a hassle or such a problematic thing. So that was definitely a plus as a black queer person. The climate in Lisbon is something that I also really loved about being there. I'll never forget the lush green trees in summer, but also the warmness of most days. Mostly you might experience some windy weather, especially when you get closer to the river, but most of the year you had mild weather, specifically if you're coming from the north. For sure, it was something I was very, very excited about, to have such wonderful weather most of the year. Just, it can't help but make you feel happier as a melanated person. So definitely 10 out of 10 for weather.
Like, where is she going without anything? She's that bold in this life? She owns the city? Get what she want whenever she want.
I remember another big thing was the bridge, the famous Lisbon bridge. When I first moved there, that was like the landmark to follow. If I was ever feeling lost, I would remember how far away from the bridge I lived, and from wherever I was, I could kind of get a sense of which direction I should go and how far to that in that direction before I could get home. Because I already visited Lisbon before living there, I knew that there was a lot of options for plant-based foods, veganism, because of the multicultural cuisine that you could find there. At the end of the day, if everything fails, you could go to a Nepalese place or Lebanese, get you some falafel, get you some good food that is mostly made out of plants. In general, it wasn't hard to find places to eat once I moved there. There are lots and lots of cafes, there's lots and lots of restaurants that cater to vegan people, and also the produce there is rich and abundant. The food is delicious, it's fresh, it's real, and as a foodie, that was also very important for me. I really loved how accessible enjoyment was in Lisbon, and that is whether you wanted to spend the weekend having a picnic by the beach and going in the ice cold water, so be warned, or maybe if you wanted to go up and enjoy a day in the forest. It was very accessible to enjoy small things without spending a lot of money and still having a really great time. I really think it's because of the weather, like that really helps, but just how easy and cheap transport is and how close you are to a little city just with a little train ride that doesn't cost you all of your money. There was just so many ways you could enjoy your life so easily without spending too much money, and I really, really appreciated that. When it comes to mental well-being and overall wellness, first of all, the extra supply of D vitamin I think definitely helps. But I also really enjoyed continuing my walking practice while in Lisbon and making sure that I got out and did at least 7,000 to 10,000 steps a day. I felt like that was really easy to do while taking in some beautiful sunsets by the river if I decided to go that way, or going all the way up when I used to live in Alcantara and going to the Monsanto Park and walking bathed in nature. And also even having a slower pace of life because we were working from home, and I guess being there during the pandemic also, you kind of were saved from the over hustle of being in a bigger city, but at the same time enjoying a slow pace and a more calm existence. So I feel like all those things together really did help when it came to wellness and mental health. For sure, one of the places I felt I was most mentally stable, so that is definitely something I also did appreciate during my time there. I feel like where you live can really make or break an experience you have somewhere. And when I first moved to Lisbon, my work sorted me out with a room that I was sharing in a hostel close to my work until I could find something more appropriate. And I actually ended up staying in that space for 3 months because I ended up building a little nice community there with the people I shared my dorm room with, some who I'm still friends with to this day. And then after that, by sheer magic and universe alignment, I met someone on Instagram that I became friends with who had a really cool vintage shop, and she had a studio place behind it that I rented just before the pandemic really became serious. I didn't know it would become serious by then, but it was just sheer luck that I wasn't at the hostel when things were locked down and we had to work from home. And I really liked the layout of that space. Like, it was 2 rooms together because they also had a kitchen, a proper full kitchen, and a bathroom. But I remember thinking that I wouldn't mind living in a shared space if I could get the same setup with the 2 rooms, like one to sleep in and one to have creative outlet for. I was really lucky to find something quite similar and get 2 rooms close to each other again in the next apartment I lived in a shared space where I had people around me, which was very important at that moment after I had survived the beginning of the pandemic by myself in a studio. I knew that it was actually nice to have people around if shit did hit the fan, but also having that kind of privacy. Like, you would live in a place that is shared, but it's not like living with proper roommates because nobody owns it that lives there. Everybody's just renting out their room. And also there was, of course, included in the rent, there was cleaning. So you never had the normal quarrels you could have if you were living with people. I really enjoyed that kind of setting for housing while I was in Lisbon, and I only lived 3 different places, but I would say that I had a great experience with all of them. Mostly a great experience, I would say. Mostly a great experience. But I really liked the last place, and I I feel like I could have enjoyed it more before I moved, and it was a pity that I didn't get to do much more in that space. But for the time I did have it, it was such a beautiful home to stay in. And the rent wasn't too crazy. I would really recommend if you're in a similar situation and you're not afraid of sharing space. It's also a great way to meet friends. I met some beautiful people in all the spaces I stayed in, except when I was living alone behind a studio. It's a great way to live in a new country and not be too isolated, but also still have your own space and not have to worry about maybe shared common space if you live in one of those professional setup kind of accommodations where the cleaning is kind of taken care of for you guys. So you can just focus on living, basically, and of course cleaning up after yourself. When it comes to community and making friends, I feel like it was a bit of a strange experience in Lisbon, mainly because I was there mostly during the lockdowns and the beginning of the pandemic. But I would say that because of my work and working at such an international company, I did have access to a lot of people I later became friends with, and also from where I was living, and then also meeting friends of friends, or meeting up with people that I became friends with through Instagram. And I made some really cool connections with people that way that I still to this day am friends with. I think had I discovered maybe Bumble or BFF, that would have been a different experience, but I did feel like I wasn't particularly lacking in friendships per se. I felt like I did manage to find a few people I could enjoy a few activities with while I wasn't working, and during the holidays I would mostly either have my family or my partner come visit. So I think I got most of my social needs met very, very easily, mostly because of my working network and working at a place where there are lots of experts as well. So you don't have many people already locked into certain groups. I would say though it was a bit hard making friends with native Portuguese or local Portuguese people. And I think that's mainly because, as I said, that it was about what kind of environment I was in and the people that were already available to me. My agent, who was the one who recruited me for the job, he was Portuguese, and I think he was the main Portuguese person I was really friends with while there. Otherwise, most of the other people were people who also had traveled there, whether that was from Denmark or from Switzerland, from Brazil, from other places in the world.
But they have some camera. Så camera med igår, der så Beyoncé ud. Beyoncé.
Jeg fik det på en billede. Så vi So on the last day, I remember like just taking it in, like the streets and the neighborhood, the places I loved to walk the most, particularly around where I live. Like when I would have my little lunch break, you could see a little park on the left side. I usually would go there with a book or podcast and eat my lunch and read. I also visited LX Factory one last time to get some souvenirs with my sister. Just enjoying all the little boutiques and restaurants and libraries in that section of where I lived. It was literally like 4 minutes from where I was staying, and I always enjoyed showing that part to the people that would come visit me because it is quite an interesting area. It's got some unique pieces, a few vintage stores, and some really good restaurants. The whole journey I had moving to Lisbon really resonated with the affirmation that things came easily and they were abundant and they were easy to keep to a certain degree, and I really needed that. I remember that was one of my biggest wishes moving to Lisbon. Ease and abundance and things to just flow, and I felt like for a good portion I got exactly that. And this is of course even taking into consideration that I was there during the pandemic, and to be honest I wouldn't have wanted to be anywhere else during that pandemic. When everything closed down, when there was no restaurants to go to, no little cafes, no little areas to shop or events to go to. The city was still so beautiful and accommodating just by itself, by its colors, by its little viewpoints, little benches hidden in different places under trees. You still could enjoy being there, and that was very special. All in all, I enjoyed my stay there, and whenever I see other black girls looking for a solo adventure, I always recommend that they check out Lisbon. There's something easy about being there. It's not perfect, but has a certain kind of a flair to it that just makes it memorable.
Esse abraço não vou tomar. Se quer saber se eu quero outro alguém, nem de graça, nem de graça. Se essa boca não me just também, se essa abraço não vou tomar. Dessa vez eu quero outro alguém, nem de graça, nem de graça. Leva a mão, espaço pra você no coração. E quem gostou faz muito barulho aí! Muito obrigado! Em nome da gerência do LACA, eu agradeço a presença de cada um. Muito obrigado, meu povo, e até amanhã, se Deus quiser. Ó, lembrando que amanhã vai rolar mix aqui e na sexta-feira também. Uma salva de palmas pro meu compadre.